Okay, well, good morning, everyone. Thanks so much for joining us on this webinar, especially for those of you who might be on the West Coast. I understand it's very early. My name is Maria Alejandra, and I'm a program coordinator at the IWMF. For those of you who may not be familiar with our work, the International Women's Media Foundation believes that the press isn't truly free unless a diverse set of voices are represented in it. To that end, we work to make sure that there's opportunities and increase opportunities to those who are underrepresented in the media, which includes women, non-binary people, and people of color. We offer safety trainings, grants, mentorship, and emergency assistance to journalists everywhere where they may need it. If anyone has any questions about any of our programs, you're more than welcome to reach out. I'll include my email in the chat later on. But without further ado, I'll let everyone else introduce themselves.
Hi, everyone. My name is Bridget Early, and I'm the IWMF's communications intern. I'm a senior at Butler University, and I'm also the managing editor for the Butler Collegian, my school's paper. We want to let you know that we're hoping this webinar will be as interactive as possible, and we want to make sure we're creating a space where everyone feels comfortable sharing their experiences with regards to journalism safety. So if you have questions or comments, we would ask that you use the raise your hand function on Zoom, and we'll enable you from there to unmute yourself. If you would prefer to ask your question anonymously, we would suggest sending the panelists a chat message, and we can do our best to address the question from there. Then, yeah, without further ado, I will allow the panelists to introduce themselves.
Hey everyone, my name is Jeff. I'm the security director of IWMF, and I will be one of the panelists today. And then sorry for I cannot put my camera today due to medical reason. But yeah, so I'm really happy to be with you all today.
Hi, my name is Kath Mossam. I'm from RPS Partnership. Oops, sorry. And I've been working with IWMF for the last 5 years. I've been supporting Jeff, delivering all the hostile environment awareness training that IWMF have delivered over the last 5 years, which predominantly really it's towards the end of the 5-year programme for the Great African Lakes. So that was done in Africa, and this year would have been the last year of the 5-year project in Latin America as well. So we do most of the training there, based in Mexico. And then last year, and really this year was going to be the focus on USA and coming around different states, delivering training, getting people ready and prepared to cover the elections, which unfortunately, as everybody's been impeded all over the world now with the COVID-19 pandemic, sadly we haven't been able to cover over the last few months. Whether we'll get there this year, I'm not too sure, but we'll keep our fingers crossed. So in the meantime, myself and Jeff, we've been delivering webinars to get our experience and information across to the people that still need it. We started really focusing after the Black Lives Matter protest started up back in May, delivering information and training for the journalists that were going to go cover these protests. And so today we're going to focus really on two different segments. I'm going to speak really for the first sort of 45 minutes, talk about planning and risk assessments and how you can safely go about your line of work. I understand most people on this webinar are sort of new or just starting off in the world of journalism, having graduated, so congratulations on your new careers. And to help you make it a long, safe career, then we're going to give you lots of resources after this webinar as well. Maria Alejandra will pass on an email link to you all that's got different resources in there and different information that will expand on the information that myself and Jeff are going to give to you in the next 2 hours, and also some different links into other avenues where you can certainly get more information on safety, and not only just safety, but help, different avenues for help that you can access as well. So we'll give you all that at the end, and we'll give you lots of different templates that you can utilise, which will make more sense as we go through this webinar. So I'll do about 45 minutes on planning and risk assessment, followed by questions. Don't wait until the end though for your questions, just keep popping your hand up or writing your questions, and we'll, you know, try and answer them as they come up, or we'll answer them at the end of the segment. And then Jeff's going to take over, and he's going to talk about how to cover sort of demonstrations and protests, and the different tactics that the police use as well that you'll come across when you go to these events. There's a lot of content there to get into the time that we've got allocated, so we perhaps won't cover absolutely everything, but if we sort of spoke about a subject and we haven't mentioned anything that you want to know, then please, you know, just ask the questions. This webinar, it's for you, it's to answer your questions, it's to help you cover demonstrations safely. So please, you know, be as interactive as possible, and it helps myself and Jeff as well. You know, if you ask the questions or tell us some experiences that you've had, then we can elaborate on those and help you. Just want to spend a little bit of time before we get onto the risk assessments, talk about planning, because planning really is one of the most important things that you should be doing before you even take a step outside of your office door, or if you're a freelancer and working from home, you know, before you leave home, you really need to think about the planning and basically what's your aim. If you're going to cover protests, say this coming weekend, what angle do you want to cover that protest from? What story do you want to sort of gain from going there? Or what photographs do you want to try and capture? And by asking yourself these questions, it gives you some idea, or it'll then start asking other questions inside your head. Okay, I want to go get the story of, maybe it's the police story that you want. You know, how are they finding covering the Black Lives Matter demonstrations for the last five or 6 weeks? What effects is it having on them? So if you're wanting to sort of go to the police angle, who do you approach? Can you do a little bit of research before you go? Is there a police liaison officer that you can contact? Do you need to make sure that you really are visible, the fact that you're press? So it's giving you lots of questions that you can answer to help your job more easily be obtained once you get there. If you don't have a definite aim and you just think, okay, I'll wander down to the demonstrations this weekend and just take it from there, just see what happens, then what we end up doing is we kind of wander around a little bit aimlessly, and whatever threats are present at a demonstration or protest, which I'll come on to in a little while, we're exposing ourselves to those threats unnecessarily sometimes, and therefore it becomes less safe, or it makes it more difficult for us to cover that story. I've also put there, look at the history of the event. You know, is it an annual event, an annual demonstration that comes up every year because it's the anniversary of something? If so, look at the event last year. Did it end up turning violent? If so, why? Can you see what triggered the violence? Is it anything that sort of happened that made everybody angry and start hurling bricks or Molotov cocktails? Or look also, how did the police deal with that? Did they use live bullets? You know, what tactics do they use? I'm not going to go into that too much here, because obviously that's going to be Jeff's, what he's going to talk about afterwards. The last sort of 5 or 6 weeks with Lives Matter, you know, that's a long time for a demonstration to keep unfolding. So what's happened over the last 5 weeks? There's certainly violence at the beginning. It was a very emotionally fueled demonstration with the unfortunate death of George Floyd. As that emotion sort of died down now, you know, because people are running out of energy, and the emotional side of it has sort of died down. So maybe it's more peaceful protest. Or actually, looking at the news around the world, certainly in UK last week, there was a police officer that held somebody down kneeling on their neck, exactly the same way as George Floyd was held down. I think I saw in the news, I can't remember what country it was in, a similar incident yesterday. So is this fueling those emotions of the crowd again? And now, you know, it's potentially going to turn more violent again, or violence against the police because they don't think the police are listening and changing their tactics. So have a look at that, and it'll give you some idea of how these events are potentially going to unravel, and when they're going to start turning violent, if they do at all. Other things we've got to think about at the moment, at the forefront of everybody really, is the COVID-19. Demonstrations are really difficult to cover normally, you know, when there's no pandemic, but obviously now we've got that extra factor to look at. And I'm going to talk about that when we look at the different threats. So we'll talk about what we can do there. Think about your profile. How do you want to be dressed when you go to these demonstrations? How do you want to be perceived? Or how do you think you're going to get perceived by people? And that all depends on the way that you dress. It's your gender, it's your colour, and lots of different other things. And again, I'm going to talk about that a little bit more as I go through the presentation. Also about the equipment. How do we carry it? What do we take? So I'm going to just quickly go over those two in a little bit more detail now, because I know before the webinar, or while the webinar was being published, I could sort of mentioned a few things that I want to cover in, and one of them was, you know, how do you dress, what do you wear when you go to demonstrations? You want some sturdy shoes. Some people prefer like a small boot with a small ankle to give you ankle support, but it definitely wants to be nice and sturdy so that you can, you know, you're going to have to be agile in demonstrations. You need to run around quite a lot, especially if things are turning a little bit violent. Maybe you're running away from that, or maybe you're running to capture a certain picture. Okay, so nice sturdy footwear. Trousers, I suggest male generally wear trousers. Females, I would say it's better to wear trousers than it is skirt, again, just because it makes you more adaptable to be able to run and get into different positions that you need to get photograph stories, or maybe take cover from certain objects. So nice loose fitting trousers. We say cotton, preferably with high cotton content. Again, if you know that police or protesters are using any kind of fire, cocktails from the protesters perhaps, then it can obviously catch your clothes on fire. So you don't want any crippling or nylon content clothing. On the side of the leg there, you can see a nice big pocket with a button. I like these particular trousers because underneath that button, they've also got a zip. When you're in a large volume of people, which demonstrations is, then that comes with a high volume of crime generally. So when you're putting things in pockets, in bags, you need to be able to really doubly secure them if you can. Pockets with sort of Velcro are not ideal because people will just sort of rip them open, and the next thing, your mobile phone or your camera lens has disappeared. Different ideas, especially for females, I would say if you don't need a belt to keep your trousers up, I would wear a belt. And you can see on this photograph here, I've turned the belt inside out. And that's just to give me a little bit more protection, or to make it a little bit more difficult for anybody to grab that belt and undo it. Because again, big threats, especially against females in demonstrations and large crowds of people, and especially when it's turning a little bit, when there's unrest, then sexual assault is one of the threats, and it's generally overlooked. People will put their hands down the back of your trousers to get a free grope. So if you've got a belt on, it just makes it a little bit more difficult for people to physically get their hands down, but also turning that belt inside out, it makes it more difficult for people to sort of undo the belt as well. So on the belt, your press pass, you need to take your press pass when you go to demonstrations. You need to be able to clearly identify yourself as press, particularly to the police. I don't like press passes being worn around the neck because that can be used as a weapon. People can actually get hold of that and pull that. So I would suggest either looping it around your belt, or if you've got a buttonhole on your jacket or on your blouse, then put that lanyard through the buttonhole and pop the press in a pocket, and if it comes out, it's not going to drop on the floor, it's still attached to you. This picture then shows somebody sort of putting the hands down the back of your trousers. So I would suggest wearing like a one-piece bodysuit if you can. That's not going to stop the hand going down your trousers, but what it will do is put a barrier between their hand and your skin. So the hand isn't going to get access into your knickers if you've got a one piece on. Okay, it's still not a nice experience, but at least there's some material between your skin and the person that's doing the assaulting. Logos. I would generally say stay away from wearing logos, but if you do want to advertise the company that you're working for, perhaps this is our company jacket, I would say use a logo that you can put on Velcro and take off, because it might be that that logo will get you into trouble, or you're working for an organisation that's done a bad story on somebody and now you're not going to be popular with them. Or if it's just a press logo, again, have it so that you can put it on and take it off. Be a little bit flexible on that if you can. Scarves and I'll come back to ponytails. Scarves and cameras, anything that's around the neck, gives somebody something to grab hold of, okay, and start pulling around. So I would say if you're taking a scarf, pop it in a bag and just use it when you need it, to cover your face if that's your improvised piece of equipment for tear gas. Again, Jeff's going to speak about that. Or on the cameras, you can see here, I've attached like a carabiner, a climbing carabiner, onto the side of a deck, which I've hooked the camera onto. So now you don't need to put that camera strap around your neck. It's hooked onto that carabiner, so you can pull your camera up, use it, but if it gets knocked out of your hand, it's not going to fall onto the floor. It's attached to your bag. Talking about bags, I don't particularly like backpacks, because if bags are on your back, people have got access to them. If you're going to use one of those, one's called the Pack Safe, and you can see that the two clips that open the bag, they actually fasten into another little lock down here, so it makes it more difficult for people to just open up your bag. Bags that I like though are sort of these off the shoulder, just one strap across your body, because you can pull that around onto your front. Or this is generally what I take to demonstrations, is a small shoulder bag like this. So again, I've got control, it's at the side, and I can easily just pull it in front of me should I need it. What you don't really want to be taking is lots and lots of equipment to demonstrations. Okay, keep it to a minimum. Lay out your equipment before you go, and then try and scale it down again if you can. Think about the camera bodies you're taking. Think about the different lenses. Can you scale down a little bit? Medical kit. I would always say take a small medical kit with you. Again, there's more information about medical kit in the post webinar. This is sort of specialist medical equipment, and this is the minimum that I would normally carry to a demonstration. And I carry it in this little pack here down in the right corner, and that's attached to my belt. Again, it's no point carrying specialist kit if you don't know how to use it. So if you haven't had any medical training, then maybe just like a good robust first aid bandage and some burns gel. So it's again knowing the history of what happens at these demonstrations. What do the police use? Yeah, if they're using live bullets, then really we're needing specialist equipment to plug those wounds. Because if you get injured at a demonstration, you'll find that even if the police are close by, they will not come and help you. Okay, when you're getting hurt by rubber bullets or tear gas and things, the police are busy. You've got to be able to self-help each other, and then get them off to specialist help afterwards. Other bits of equipment that you might take, solar charges. Always take water and electrolytes, because you're going to get severely dehydrated during these long days. Sun cream maybe. I've got a personal alarm down there in the bottom left-hand corner. They are probably more useful when you're going to and from the demonstration. If you pull a personal alarm during a demonstration, people probably won't hear it because there's so much noise during that gathering. Okay, so personal alarms really from when you're leaving the demonstration and you're going back home, back to the office, back to your parked car, or back to public transport, when you're more isolated, that you've got an alarm in your pocket should you start getting it. And of course, we've got the gloves and masks there. I would always take extra mask with you to demonstrations for the COVID-19, because tear gas, if you get gas, your eyes are going to run. If you've just got a normal sort of cloth mask, it's going to get wet and you'll need to change it. Last couple of slides then on the planning. When we get to the venue, have a look where the venue is going to be. Where is that demonstration going to be held before you even leave the office? It's all part of your pre-planning. But when you go early, get there early, have a look at the ground. What is this square like, especially if you've never been there before? Where do the different side streets go off to? Is that your escape route should things sort of turn nasty? And by getting to these venues early, you'll see that the police are there early and they're setting up their barriers. Okay, and they might be what you've already identified as your route out to your safe area. Now you might see that barriers are actually blocking that exit from you because the police are putting up certain barriers in a certain way to maybe kettle people if it all starts going nasty. If you're going to venues, you know, if you're sort of, we're not going to talk too much about political rallies, but political rallies normally indoors. So again, have a look at the venue, have a look at the escape doors, the fire doors of the venue. What are the back exits? Where do they go to? Get as much information as you can before the actual demonstration starts. And you're asking yourself, okay, if there's violence and it's all coming from my right, where would I go? If it comes from the left, where am I going to go? Is there a high point? Back to that photograph there. You don't have to be on the ground at ground level with the demonstrators and the police. You can go maybe up onto the top floor of a multi-storey car park. You can maybe go onto the roof garden of a hotel. Maybe it's just a high bank or something. Have a look at these high points because you get really good footage without actually being stuck right in the middle of a crowd. Identify some safe havens. Where are your points of safety, where you feel comfortable that you could go to if you've got into any trouble, if somebody's trying to attack you, if somebody's trying to intimidate you, if you just need to have 10 minutes, 15 minutes rest. Where can you go? Where you know, maybe it's a cafe, maybe you've parked your car somewhere quite close, not too close, because again, if the violence turns nasty, are they going to start, you know, attacking cars and things? But identify some kind of safe haven, and generally it's only 2 blocks away, and you can find somewhere that you can relax and recharge, reassess. Meeting points you have to think about, especially if you're working with other people, if you get lost and separated. I'll come back onto that in a little while. And of course, we need to find out or speak to the police liaison officers, ask them their opinions. You know, is this protest going to move? If it's going to be a mobile one, which direction are they expecting it to go? And, you know, chat to the police, get their feelings, how, you know, what are they expecting to happen as well. And I'm going to let Jeff talk more about the police in a moment. Communications are a big thing as well. You've got to be able to communicate with somebody. I'm just going to put all those up there and then I'm going to speak about them. Now, I understand most people that are going to be listening to this webinar, you probably work by yourself, yeah, freelancers, or you're just starting into reporting, and you find yourself working by yourself. Demonstrations are very difficult to cover, and it's very, very easy to get caught up in the violence, okay, or just get caught out and maybe hit by a rubber bullet or caught out with the gas and things. Because what happens when we're working by ourselves, we get very focused on what we are trying to record, or we're focusing, listening to somebody's story, and we're not aware of everything else that goes on around ourselves. So the first thing that I would suggest you do, if you do work by yourself, is try and identify other journalists around you and set up a buddy-buddy system, okay? So you can watch each other's backs. And I'm going to talk about that in a couple of slides' time. But also your buddy-buddy system is having somebody to communicate to. So if you do work for an agency, it's somebody in that office that you can communicate back to. Or if you're a lone worker, a freelancer, maybe it's somebody at home, or maybe it's another journalist that's not working the demonstrations, or maybe it's just a friend that you can just phone every now and again to let them know where you are and what you're doing. Different things that we can use to communicate then. Obviously, the obvious one is the mobile phone, but that can go out of service. All right, the intelligence agencies or the police can block the mobile phone signal if things are getting out of hand. So we'll talk about that in a moment. Emails, consider using encryption, VPNs. That'll be in the post-webinar information because we don't have time to talk about it right now. Social media, yeah, a lot of media outlets now want people to do Instagram and Twitter while you're out in the field, and maybe you've got to report live. So again, where do you do these from? Think about how you stand, because as soon as we're on mobile phones, you know, we're sending things, our focus is here, we've got tunnel vision, and we're not looking at what's going on around ourselves. I'm going apps. Apps are really useful, again, for keeping in communication with people. Send on WhatsApp, you can send your location. So instead of sending a text message every hour to somebody to tell them where you are, you can just send your location, and then they can see exactly where you are and what you're doing. Motorola radios, they're a useful backup system for when the phone signal goes down. You've got a radio, at least you can then still talk to your buddy that's out on the ground with you somewhere. Just sort of already spoke about that, who you're checking in with. How often do you check in with this person? It depends on the level of risk in the areas that you're working in. If you're working in quite a dangerous or volatile situation, then you know you want to be checking in more. If it's quite a nice peaceful demonstration, then maybe it's only once every 4 or 5 hours, yeah, and you just sending somebody a quick message, I'm okay, I'm here, I'm doing this, or the demonstration's moved, I'm now in this position down here. Okay, but don't forget to give that person that you're checking into a plan, because don't get in contact with them when they're expecting you to. What do you want them to do? Okay, again, there's more information in the post-webinar to go into that, because that's quite a meaty subject in itself. But I just want to make you aware that you should really be communicating to somebody. The contingencies, again, just ask yourself, if there's no phone signal, how am I going to contact people? It might be that you've got this little radio, so at least you can talk to somebody nearby. If you get lost and separated, if you've already pre-designated a meeting point, then you can go to that place to meet up. Medical, yeah, if you've got an accident or you get hit by a rubber bullet or something, if you've got a small medical kit with you, you can help yourself and then get them away to medical help. And this is a big one really for people covering protests. You have got rights as a journalist, okay, you've got rights to be there, you've got rights to photograph people as long as you're not on private land. Again, there's another leaflet that I will include in the post-webinar. Most importantly, you've got to ask yourself, if you are detained, and quite often journalists are, even though you're displaying the fact that you're press and everything, you still might get detained. And the most important thing is to have the number of an attorney. If you don't have one, then you can see down here the Reporters Committee for the Free Press. They've got a legal defence hotline. Write that number on your arm, all right, with a Sharpie. So even if you lose your phone or the police take your phone, which they shouldn't, but they could, then you've got that number there and you've got a number to phone. You need to phone them as soon as possible, because they are there, they know the local people, they know the local attorneys that they can get in touch with to help release and get you out of there, to help journalists. So take a copy of that number if you haven't already got that. Okay, so coming on to sort of the meat, or the second half of my chat, we're going to talk about threat and risk. Just want to take a 2-second pause. Do we have any questions at all at the moment from anybody on what I've just spoken about there? Does anybody have any questions?
It looks like there are no questions. Feel free to use the Q&A box or to raise your hand and we can unmute you and allow you to talk.
Okay, I shall carry on then, because time goes quickly when we've got, well, when I've got lots to say. But please do, you know, any questions. No, don't feel like you're asking a silly question or a stupid question, because there isn't such a thing. Okay, so please just ask any questions at all, and I'll quite happily try and answer them for you. Next, I'm going to cover what we call a risk assessment. So we talk about the threat and the risk. And to put in very simplistic, basic terms, a threat is something that is out there that can obviously cause you an injury or damage, but it's something that if it's present, you cannot eliminate it. Okay, we cannot get rid of that threat. So if we're going to a demonstration and we know there's quite often, especially in the last 4 or 5 weeks, people that have been covering Black Lives Matter protests have had their equipment stolen. So there's criminals, yeah, there's robbery, theft. So we know that's a threat that could be used against ourselves. We cannot get rid of that criminal, okay? We don't know who they are. They just look like everybody else. But what we can do is we can minimize our risk to that threat. And so that's what we need to do. In every situation that you go to cover, as a reporter, as a media person, you need to look at the area that you're going to go work in, and think about the different threats that might be present there to you as an individual, also to you as a group. So if you're going, I can look at the threat towards me, but if I'm going to go work with Jeff, for instance, then maybe that threat is now different. Maybe it's a lower threat because I've got Jeff and people don't see me as vulnerable because I'm not a female by myself anymore. So maybe that threat is, you know, I've reduced my risk to that threat by taking Jeff along with me. Or maybe I'm going with somebody of a person of colour, okay? And that might raise our threat to raise our risk to a certain threat. And I'm going to come back on to that in a moment. We really need to look at individual risks and ask yourself questions, how it can happen and why it can happen. And what we're aiming to do is lower our risk to that threat so that hopefully we don't get harmed and we can carry on obtaining our pictures and stories as safely as possible. So when we talk about demonstrations and protests, there's generally sort of 2 likely areas that those threats can come from, that can be posed from. And one is from the police. Okay, the police do harass journalists. You might get injured from their rubber bullets, from the tear gas, from real bullets if they're using, you know, weapons, live weapons. They can detain you. Like I said, you've got your First and your Fourth Amendment rights, but you generally still get detained. You can get arrested, and they could possibly take data. They shouldn't, and I'm no expert on the First and Fourth Amendment, but I will add information for you to read up on later. So the likely threats from demonstrators and protesters, they're more or less the same, apart from this time we've got sort of like the added, well, we don't have they shouldn't be arresting you, the demonstrators shouldn't be arresting you, but we do have the crime and the sexual assault added in there. I haven't heard a lot about anybody getting sexually assaulted over the last 5 weeks, but that's not to say it hasn't happened, okay? It's a big problem, and it does happen. It's a common problem where there's a high volume of people. Generally it's not spoke about, or people don't always report it, and that's why you won't always hear about it. But certainly if you think back to, you know, the Arab Springs, Lara Logan got sexually assaulted there, and she had a big security team surrounding her as well, so it still happens. She was one of the first people to sort of speak about it, and it does happen. So it's a factor that people need to think about, not just at the demonstrations, but travelling to and from. And then, of course, we've got the COVID-19, which we spoke about earlier. So what do? We take a risk assessment table, and we can, again, Jeff's actually spent a lot of time producing a risk assessment template for IWMF, and he's going to share that with you later. And Jeff's template is really good. It's very thorough. It's probably about 10 pages long, maybe not quite as much, but it goes through each subject and it asks you questions, and it just makes, it's a really good, useful tool for you, especially when you're starting off, even if you're an experienced journalist, to read through, because there's lots of things that we forget. Yeah, we get a little bit complacent sometimes. So do have a look at the template that Jeff's made, and then look at this risk assessment table as well, because with the risk assessment table, each threat that we've identified that we might come across when we go to the demonstrations this coming weekend, we need to then ask ourselves, at the bottom we can see the likelihood. So what's the likelihood of that that criminal pinching my equipment, okay, my camera? And what consequence, that's on the left hand side of the table there, what's the consequence to me if I have my equipment pinched? Well, certainly if you're a freelancer, money, in my experience with freelancers, is quite tight. And so if you've got the option of buying a new lens for your camera maybe, or taking out insurance to cover your equipment, I would say, in my opinion, most people will buy that extra lens. Yeah, you buy the nice new lens to get the better quality pictures, to hopefully get you a really good picture that you're going to sell and start making a name for yourself and get more work in. Whereas insurance, yes, we need the equipment insurance, but we don't always take it. So the likelihood of being picked on and getting your equipment stolen, well, if we're working by ourselves, it makes it a little bit more vulnerable. If we're carrying our cameras in a camera bag, it's telling people there's a camera in there. If you've got your camera on show while you're traveling to these events, again, cameras and lenses, expensive equipment, valuable equipment, yeah. So it draws people to them. So if we're doing things like that, we've got our pieces of valuable equipment on show or in camera bags and things, then the likelihood, and we're traveling by ourselves and we're not really paying attention, then the likelihood is it could be quite high that we get picked on, okay? Especially at the end of demonstrations when we're tired, we've had a long day, we just want to get home, we drop our situational awareness, yeah, and we might be texting, telling people I'm on my way home, or we're checking in with people. So again, our peripheral vision is here and not looking to see who is around ourselves. So it could be quite number 4 or number 5, likely or high. And should we get our equipment taken off ourselves? Well, again, it's going to have quite a major effect, because now if we've got no camera, we can't do our job, yeah, and we haven't really got any spare money to go buy a new camera. So that's going to be quite high up here in the red. And if you get into the red area, you're going to ask yourself then, is it worth going to do this job? Okay, if it's going to be quite a high risk for myself. But you want to go cover the demonstration, so you've got to try and tell yourself or ask yourself, what security protocols, what things can I do to lower my profile, to not be, oh gosh, it's getting late in the day here in Spain. My brain's going a bit numb. What can I do to not become a target to these criminals? So again, you've got expensive equipment. Instead of putting it in a camera bag, put it into an old shopping bag, an old carrier bag or something. So when you're walking to the demonstrations, people just think you're carrying a bag of shopping or something. Yeah, it's not saying I've got an expensive camera in here. Maybe get sticky tape and put that over the name of your camera so that people can't see it's a really good make of a camera when you're getting your camera out to use it. So you're reducing the valuable worth of the equipment that you're using. So hopefully now, it's going to be less likely that you get targeted in the first place. And obviously, if you've got insurance for your equipment, then okay, it's still going to have a big effect if you get equipment taken. But if you can replace it because you've got the insurance, then it's not going to have such a big consequence. So now we're down sort of here in the middle of the table, and you can say, okay, the risk is lower. I've managed to lower my risk, so I'm accepting that I can still go and do that job. I'm accepting the little bit of risk that's always there, because you will never get rid of the risk totally. The corona virus, how do we reduce our risk to that? You've got to think about when you're traveling. So if you're traveling on public transport, there's a high risk there that people could have the coronavirus within your carriage that you're traveling on. Demonstrations, you're going to be amongst a high volume of people, and certainly from the videos and the photographs I've seen, a lot of the protesters don't wear masks. Okay, so again, if they're contagious, that virus is going to spread quite a lot. Are you working in an area where there's a high number of coronavirus numbers? What about yourself? If you're like me and a little bit old now, all right, it's going to affect you more should you get it. If you've got underlying breathing problems, again, that's the consequence. If you're getting it, it's going to affect you more than it is from a young, healthy, fit person. So you've got to ask yourself, what can I do to lower my risk? I'm not that old, but I'm certainly older than the audience here. So perhaps it would affect me more. And if I've got underlying underlying breathing problems or maybe asthma, then I don't want to be going into the middle of these big crowds, because, you know, if I get this corona, it's going to affect me a lot. It's going to take me a lot of time to recover. So maybe I want to do stories that are on the outer edges of the crowds, try and social distance myself from the people that I'm taking photographs of or getting the stories from. So you've got to think of different ways to make these things more safe for you to proceed. And don't forget, you know, once you get home, I've already mentioned it, when we leave demonstrations, we lower our guard. Yeah, we're on our way on with that. Another day done, especially if it's been a bit hairy, been a bit scary, you know, things haven't gone to plan, or people have come up and been nasty to you because you're media. Don't forget, once you get home, you've got to think about the clothes that you're wearing, your equipment, that could be contaminated. So it's not just a case of getting home, putting your equipment on a table somewhere and going to bed. You've got to clean your equipment. You've got to look after yourself, and especially if you're sharing your home environment with somebody else. There's more information on how to clean your equipment in the post-course webinar as well. So once we've identified the threats that's specific to this task, you know, the coronavirus maybe, how can it happen? Why can it happen? You know, where, when, how, who could be involved? And you've got to ask yourself those questions really of every threat you've identified. So if it's a medical threat, you know, the police use rubber bullets and things, well, how can it happen? It happens when the violence escalates. So again, if we're aware during the time that we're covering the protest, every 10-15 minutes, set your alarm on your mobile if you have to. You know, to every 15 minutes your alarm goes off. It gives you that jolt. Okay, have a look around you. What's happening? Yeah, and ask yourself these questions. Are they putting gas canisters on their weapons? Are they putting their protective equipment down their face? If they are, they're getting ready to maybe fire tear gas. Are you downwind? Are you going to get covered in tear gas? This is the time that you need to be reassessing and moving. Get yourself to the outer edges, get yourself upwind so that you don't actually get tear gassed. Don't forget, always have a look, you know, when you're taking pictures, have a look around you. If people start coming from the left, where's my escape route? If police start charging from the right, where am I going to go? Where can I still get some good pictures? What you don't want to end up is you being right in the middle of a crowd, because A, you won't get a story, you won't get the pictures, you'll be part of the story that's published the next day. Okay, keep coming back to the outer edges of that protest to safely get your stories. Take a 5-10 minutes, reassess, have a look around you, where's your safety, but then if necessary, go back into the crowd for 10 minutes and then come back out. Okay, keep going in and coming out. These really are my last couple of slides. I mentioned it earlier when we talked about what's the threat. It's not just the threat for you. Or if I meet up with you and I say, oh, you know, I feel like I'm vulnerable because I'm a young, you know, if you're young in your 20s maybe, people might think that you're an easy target because, you know, you're not experienced or anything. Whereas if they see me as a media person, I look like I've been around a little bit and I might have a bit more experience. So they might see me as a harder target maybe to come and apprehend or get my equipment or something. So you've got to think about you as your age and your gender. Do you blend in? Do you want to blend in? When we spoke about profile earlier on one of the earlier slides, it might be that you actually feel safer if people think that you're part of the protesters. So maybe you're going to dress so you blend in with the protesters. And that's good until things start going wrong and the police get involved. Because now you actually want the police to recognise you as a media person and not get arrested with the rest of the protesters. So as long as you've got the ability to then put on maybe an outer vest that says press when you need to, but you've got to be able to change that profile to be able to identify yourself to the police as well. I've certainly seen with the Black Lives Matter, certainly early on, I think it was in about the first 2 weeks, there was African-American lady. In fact, I think it was this lady here that's holding up this, this banner. She was apprehended by the police, and she said she was pressed, and she had two cameras around her neck, and they still wanted to detain her. And she was questioning it and asking why, and they were just about to put her into sort of like the zip ties, the plastic cuffs, and two white photojournalists came up and they spoke to the police, and they got them to release her. So sometimes having a mixed gender, mixed ethnicity blend, if you're working within a group, that works really well, because people do get targeted because of the colour of the skin, or the gender. And so sometimes if we can have a mixed blend within our teams, then we can help each other as well. Or we can help de-escalate certain situations sometimes. You've got to remember though, if you do work within a team, and I know a lot of people on this will be working alone, but that's where I'm going to talk about doing this buddy system. When you do work with other people, we've all got a different risk appetite. And so you just got to respect. You've got to respect other people's risk appetite. So if you want to go forward, especially if things, are getting a little bit out of hand, getting a little bit sketchy and scary, the people that you're working with might not forward into that. So you've got to chat to people beforehand and just see what we're prepared to do, because actually getting into the middle of a situation isn't always the best place to be as a journalist either. And you'll certainly see a lot of the more experienced journalists, they tend to go to the outer edges and up to high points to get really good pictures of the whole thing unraveling, rather than being right in the middle of the crowd sometimes. The lone worker, I keep mentioning this buddy system, you will see other journalists when you get to demonstrations, even if you've never met them before, go up, introduce yourself, talk to people. It might be, okay, I want to go over there and take a few pictures, but it's a bit of a shaky situation. Do you mind just watching my back for 5 minutes while I do it? And then once they've watched your back, so basically while you're doing this tunnel vision, you're doing your interview or you're getting those photographs, they're watching everything else around you. And if they see something hostile or something about to happen, they can tell you, and then you get out of there before it happens. Then you can do the same for them. So we're looking after each other. And it's the safest way, honestly, to be able to cover demonstrations. And the last part there really is the emotional care. It takes a toll on you covering demonstrations or doing any kind of media work. Quite often, it depends what stories you're covering, but quite often you cover tough, emotional stories, sad stories. You'll be covering stories that really frustrate you, and you don't feel like we've got no power as a journalist to change anything, but you can help tell that story, and hopefully that will set the process to change in the long run. But it takes an emotional toll on you as a person, and it depends also what other things you've got on in your life. So you might have family problems, you might have money problems, you might have health problems. COVID-19's taken a huge impact on a lot of people. So think about yourself as well, and try and take a little bit of time out to make sure that you are fit and healthy enough, and just feel strong enough to keep going back to these demonstrations, especially if they continue week after week, because they will start to affect you as well. So again, in our little post-webinar link, we've got some some emotional self-care that we need to take seriously, because you're just starting your career in journalism, and you want it to be a long, successful one. What you don't want to do is just go full in all the time and end up getting burnt out. And unfortunately, we've met quite a few journalists who reach burnout. Some of them then are forced to take time out and they come back into journalism. Some people never return to journalism, okay? And you don't want that. You want to keep healthy and look after yourself. So awareness, this is my very last slide. I've already mentioned most of these points. Get to your venue early. Have a look, where are you going to stand? What positions do you think are best? Where are your exits to safety should you need them? Whilst you're there, you know, what's going on around you? What's the police doing? What are the protesters doing? If you see the protesters pulling up the scarves around the face, is it because they know tear gas is about to be fired? Or are they trying to cover their face because they're going to start looting the local shops and things? Yeah. Work in pairs. And that's my last point really, is listen to your gut feeling. Yeah, we've all got this built-in mechanism. Yeah, it's your survival instinct. But if you ever get that gut feeling or the hairs on the back of your neck and something is just not right, yeah, and even if you sort of look up and you're looking and you're listening and you can't work out what's wrong, still listen to that. Take yourself away from the presentation for 5 or 10 minutes, maybe have a cup of tea, cup of coffee, and just stand and soak in the atmosphere and really listen and look around and reassess. And then maybe you're just going to move another 30, 40 meters down the road and then carry on working. But be aware as well when you're, especially as a female, you know, and it's getting late, because by having a look around, you might find that all of a sudden you're just surrounded by men when actually you started off with quite a few females around you. And as it's getting late, particularly, I would say if you find yourself surrounded in a purely male environment, especially when you don't know people, I would then move and go to another place where there's more females, you know, sort of safety in numbers sometimes. Okay, so if we've got any questions, I'll take them now. There's 2 links there that provide some really good information for planning and risk assessments, and lots of digital information and all sorts of wonderful goodies for freelance journalists on the Royal Pet Trust and the INSEE News Safety Organisation. So there's 2 there to get you started, and then we'll send you a link later with lots of other information. There's my email address and there's Maria Alejandra's email address, so you can get in touch with me, or if you want any information from Jeff, please go via Maria Alejandra and she will sort that out for you. But does anybody have any questions now before I hand over to Jeff?
Yeah, it looks like we have a few.
Awesome.
So the first one is from Annunciata from Rwanda, and the question is asking about how journalists with disabilities can, especially photojournalists, can still do the work they need to do with their cameras, and also about how best they can dress.
Okay, I guess it depends what disabilities we talk about in particular. So you don't have to share that with me now. You can email me afterwards and we can have a personal chat, or we can do it via email. It doesn't matter. But I would have a look at what disabilities they are, and if it's something, you know, maybe you haven't got the use of one arm, then we need to, and you're a photographer, then we need to look at different pieces of equipment that we can either buy or we can improvise to help and enhance the way that you use that camera, or other equipment that you have. Anything that you do have to adapt, we're talking now sort of for physical disabilities, it's like probably everything that you've used since you've had your disability, you've got to practice using it. So, you know, even when we talk about using equipment for against gas, yeah, tear gas, for instance, whether we're using a manufactured specialist mask or whether we're improvising with a mask, we've got to practice getting these things on. And that's even when you haven't got disabilities, because if you don't put them on right, then it's still going to leak and you're going to get gas inside there. So I've been very sort of generalistic in my answer there. I've probably not answered it properly, but whoever's asked that question, if you want to get in touch with me direct, then we can probably talk about it more in detail and sort of personalise it to you, if that helps.
Perfect. Let's see. Our next one is from Mumin. In a conflict zone where police beat journalists, where we have to be on the ground taking pictures, what are the tactics we should use to be able to do more work with less risk?
So when the police attacked journalists, was that, and how do we carry on taking pictures? Okay, if we're talking about just in the States, in America, If you clearly identify yourself as a journalist, then the police should not attack you. Having said that, we've all seen the news in the last few weeks where, and I've got video clips of it that we play in different training, where people have got press on the helmets, press on the jackets, and they still get attacked and tear gassed and everything else from the police. I would initially, identify yourself as press as quickly as you can, as clearly as you can. If the police keep telling you to get on the floor or telling you to do a certain thing, then that is what you have to do, okay? Even if you know it's in your right to be there, to carry on photographing, I would do what the police say, because the more that we stand there and sort of assert the fact that we are media, the more we talk about conflict management, and what we're trying to do is de-escalate by sort of obeying their orders. Because if you don't obey their orders, then they will find something to detain you, and then they'll arrest you, and then you're in custody, and now you've probably lost that whole evening's work, even though you get in touch with attorneys and they'll let you out, and then eventually the police will turn around and they'll issue some kind of apology because you shouldn't have been arrested, but you've still lost that night's work. Yeah, and it's frustrating and everything. So try and minimize it as much as you can from the beginning by, clearly saying who you are. Try not to antagonize the police. Jeff's going to speak about the police in a moment, because actually, and I'm not sticking up for the police by any means at all, but they have quite a difficult job, and they don't always have the right equipment to know exactly what's going on either. So it's a little bit confusing for the police sometimes when things are getting out of hand. The only way I can sort of just answer the second part of that question, which is how do you do it as safely as possible? It's all about situational awareness. It's all about knowing what's going on around you. So I try to teach it in the 3 A's. So it's awareness, anticipation, and avoidance. So if you can, like I said, set your alarm on your phone if you're working by yourself for it to ring every 15 minutes. And that is telling you, okay, stop, put your camera down or end that interview and take a step back. If you're in the middle of a crowd, you might not have been 5 minutes ago, but now the crowd's all around you. Get to the outer edges of that crowd, yeah? Start listening, because when we're focusing on cameras or on an interview, we lose our ability to hear. So now we're going to start listening to the crowd. Are they still the same sort of chanting and emotions, or has it now got heightened? Do you think people are now on the verge of turning violent? So what we're trying to do now is anticipate. And if we can pick up on different things, or we can see people stockpiling bricks near their feet because they're going to start throwing them at people, we're going to, okay, violence is going to start. I need to avoid this. I need to get to a place of safety, or I need to get to a high point to still get my photographs, but being in a place of safety myself. All right. And you've got to keep doing that. You've got to keep reassessing. It takes a little bit of discipline. Yeah. Especially when we're new into these environments, because it's quite exciting at times. Yeah. And there's all these good photographs and things to take, but you've got to keep taking that step back. Somebody described it as like a flower. So you go into the middle of the flower to get some interviews, and then you're going back out to the petals to reassess, get your breath, and then go back into the middle of the crowd. But you're always at most high risk when you're in the middle of that crowd. So don't get stuck in there for a long time. Come out, reassess, reposition yourself. Yeah. If the crowd's moved a little bit, now the area that you've identified as your escape route is no longer there. So we need to identify a new one. Be that one step ahead all the time. Ask yourself, if the police come now, where am I going to go? If they start firing tear gas, what am I going to do? Yeah, keep that one step ahead. Anything else?
Yeah, we have, it looks like 2 more, both from TK. The first one is, when being detained by the police, should a reporter resist detention and maybe try explaining you're a reporter at the moment, or comply and wait for the more appropriate time later, like at a police station, to explain who you are and why you're there?
Yeah, so initially, get your press ID out if you can. Don't make any sudden movements. If it's in a pocket, don't sort of dive and put your hand into the pocket quickly, because that policeman doesn't know who you are, doesn't know if you're going to pull a weapon. Okay, so I'm pressed. Show them, you haven't got any weapons. I'm pressed. Get your ID out. Show them. It depends on the situation. If it's a real volatile situation, and the police, they've got their adrenaline working as well. You know, their heart's beating fast. They're not fully aware of what's going on. So they're going to treat everybody the same, and they might want to get everybody on the floor initially so that they can get control. And so if that's what they're trying to do, even though you've said you're press, if they're telling you to get on the floor, yeah, and wait for a more appropriate time. Once they've got everybody on the floor, or they've got sort of people under control, and they come near you, that's when you can then sort of say, hey, you know, I'm pressed, do you mind if I get up? Or, and it depends on that person and how well trained they are as to how they react to that. But it might be that you have to wait until you're at a detention centre. But try and anticipate it. Yeah, if you can see things are going to happen, you never want to be in the middle of the crowd and the police at the same time. Always be on those outer edges. Give yourself options. All right, I can see this going mad. I'm going to step back a little bit more and hopefully not get caught up in that detainment. But I'll let Jeff speak about that in a moment, because I'm aware now I'm sort of eating into his time a little bit. But last couple of questions then.
Yeah, the last one is, should a reporter's detention be a part of their news?
It could be, and that is, I keep talking about buddy-buddy system. So even if you just met other reporters there, or if you see a reporter being detained, video it for them, because if it does go to court and it's just your word against the police, you're probably going to lose. But if somebody else has got some footage of you being detained and it was unlawful or, you know, unnecessary, you've got that footage, picture and everything else to back up your story, and it'll go a long, long way to help, you know, clear your name, get you released and everything else. So it could become part of the story as well. Okay, I'll do any more questions at the end, or I'll answer them as Jeff's speaking. I'll type some answers in. So I'll hand over to Jeff, because I've eaten into his time a little bit. But thank you so much, everybody. Jeff?
Yeah, awesome. I'm gonna just put my screen. Okay, sharing. All right. Okay. Now I'm gonna slideshow current site. Okay. All right. Right now, we're gonna speak about more in depth in terms of protests, right? In the U.S. context, what we actually see right now, right? And that will actually be useful for you, you know, like this year, and as well, you know, like in the next incoming years, in terms of politics tactic. Of course, the context may change, but you know, like what we're seeing in the U.S. right now, it's gonna be like we're gonna see these kind of like protests in the next weeks and months, and then as well probably the day, well, post-election day, right? Whether if which one was gonna actually win the White House, but we're gonna see some. We're expecting to see some violence, demonstration post-election day, whether it's the Democrat or the Republican. Okay. All right. So I may repeat what Kat, you know, because you know, she say a couple of really good points during her risk assessment presentation, but we may just repeating right exactly, you know, like the same thing, right? In terms of safety during protests. Okay. One thing you can do is you know, in terms of like before, in terms of preparation, is social media, right? And then to really looking up like what kind of elements was going to be, how many person. It's always a good thing to know. As well, like the possible reaction against journalists from protesters. We know security forces, right? They will, yeah, at a certain point, right, be violent against a crowd, right? But we need to identify like who's going to be the key players. Could be if you see a lot of Antifa movement, right, or you know that a lot of Antifa movement will be in the crowd, but it's basically a big sign that, you know, like it's going to be turned violent. Okay. Like who's like, if it's like any like Black Lives Matter movement, who's leading the protest, right? More it's organized, less chaotic it could be, less organized it is as a protest, more chaotic it could be. So I'm looking for these elements: anti-movement, Antifa movement, and Black Bloc. Okay. If it's not an area that you're not, if it's an area that you're not familiar with, but go ahead of time to see what it is. If you have no time or because you have other stuff to do, you could definitely use Google to really look it up, like where's going to be the action if you've never been to that part of the city, or this is a good thing where, let's say, if you're driving, where you're going to put your car. And it's always good, to be honest, like Google Map and then just walking, if you were there, but just to see the setting. For photographers and video, I think it's extremely important to do that, to basically going through Google Map and then walking the street with the cursor to see basically how it's gonna, what's the physical like place, okay, and that's gonna be really important that you do that if you're a photographer or video. And then the violence, if you do that ahead of time, you're gonna be definitely more prepared when the shit's gonna hit the fan. So if you cannot go there, you don't have access to internet, you can send someone there ahead of time, like, I don't know, 3 hours before the protest to see what it is. Kat was saying to have a sort of like a point. We're going to discuss about that, having sort of like an administrative point. We're going to speak the next slide about that. If you're going to drive, do not park near the place of the action. The reason is because, they may just damage your car, or if you want to live, or you want to leave the place for XYZ reason, could be for safety reason. Like if you put your car in the action, you won't be able to getting out. So it's always good to have your car not too far, not too close, right? But it's definitely, you have to take that in consideration. When you park, place your car in a ready position, right? Ready position is like this, right? That, like the front of the car is ready to go. You don't want to be in reverse, okay? One of the other tips is, as Kat was saying, is arriving earlier. It's always good. Earlier, you're gonna be more stuff you're gonna be able to do, like before, like basically the madness, right? So earlier, it's gonna be always your best tool for managing the risk. And then it's great to take pictures. If you arrive early, you can actually walk and then stuff, and then plan a bit better. It's advisable to take pictures at first and then interviews, especially if you're going to the first line of protesters and then the police, which is the most vulnerable point. Try to do it as soon as possible. Then you're there. Because that's going to be basically the first, there's going to be the most vulnerable place, but it's going to be the most dangerous point there. So I try to do it at first, because after it's maybe a bit complicated to do it. Having one administrative point and one security point, I will speak of that on next slide. Kat mentioned for the press ID on your waist. Try not to wear all black clothing. Try to have some sort of like neutral color, like gray or any color. You don't want to attract too much attention, but you don't want to wear all black. The reason is because you don't want to be associated with Antifa, from anyone, right? You don't want to look like them. Work as a team when shooting pictures. It's more like in terms of situation of awareness when you're going into a crowd. The best, if you're with someone who's taking pictures, it's always a good thing to to be near the person and looking her or his back while the person is taking pictures. So you want to be basically in his back to basically looking if anything happening, and if anything happening, you can just pull on his backpack or his bag or his shirts. You can just pull him or her, and then like you can, like, if anything happen, like you just pull the person with on the back, and then the person will know that something is odd, and then he's gonna actually back up, right? Backing up. That's why you want to be always in the back of the person, right? Well, that's why you going to a crowd, you want to be in the back always. And then if something happened, you want to pull on the shirts. When you pull on a shirt, it's mean the person needs to back up. And when you, okay, you can go, you just put your full palm of your hand to the shoulder of the person, then the person can go. So I pull, person back up, and then when you put your whole palm is okay, the person can go ahead. Because you have to understand is photographers and video journalists, they have like a tunnel vision. Tunnel vision is basically like a horse. Horse, they don't, like, they have a perfect vision, but what they have is when they're gonna race is they only see basically they don't have a full perfect vision because of the stuff they're pointing on their head, right? And then they don't see what's around them. The same thing with journalists taking pictures. They really only see what is in front of them, but they don't have the global picture, which is, if you work with someone, being behind that person will really help them, because you're gonna be able to, like, see what's dangerous or not when you're in the action. Try to film from higher ground, like Kat was saying, above the crowd if it's possible. It's good for two reasons. Is because of you're most likely to be a target from the police. It's safer, and then the other aspect is the gas. Okay, we're gonna speak about tear gas. Stay away from anyone with a loudspeaker. The reason is because it's the first one that they're actually gonna the police, they usually, it's one of the elements they want to taking down as soon as possible. When the protest getting violent, the police getting violent, they want to arrest these individual, right? So stay away from the person with a loudspeaker from the crowd. And then basically try to be mobile, right? Like Kat was saying with the bag, you need to be as slick and as small as possible. When you're going to a crowd, it's always better. Okay. Cool. How to move in a protest, right? What I was saying earlier about the reunion point, right? The administrative point is you want to have a point, right? That you can come back all the times to that point, right? To if you work with someone, right? You may want to split to do stuff, like one's going to do interview and the other will take pictures, right? You want to have a sort of a point, because it's quite overwhelming when you and then I think she said like safe event, right? But like a sort of administrative point in terms of like if you need to speak, where you need to exchange batteries, or if you just get lost and you're not able to communicate with each other. There's a lot of times that you will not be able to communicate through SMS or WhatsApp or normal call, because the network get overwhelmed. And then we see a lot in like active shooters or protests, right? That it's impossible to send a text. So why you need a sort of a point that it's in advance before to work. Okay, well, that screen here, that's going to be let's say if I'm working with Kat, right? So all right, Kat, we're going to work. I'm going to take pictures, and then you do what you have to do. Okay. And then we're going to split. It's better it's not split, but life, it's it's like that. It's complicated, right? It's why you need to do what you have to do. But always better to be together, especially at night. At night, don't split, please. Do not split. You're definitely more vulnerable at night. Really another point. Oh my, okay, my cursor's okay. You want to have that point in advance. You maybe want to have a secret point, but secret point maybe the car. If let's say that point is compromised, which is if this crowd was running to this point, but this point is kind of compromised because you cannot doing you know, you can, it's not really safe to be there, especially if the shooting started happening, right? So when you move, you know, you want to, let's say I'm going by myself. The way what I want to say is like, you know, you want to try to do, sorry, my cursor is frozen. Okay. You want to get inside the crowd, right? And then you want to take the same path that you took, right? One, you don't want to get like a snake, right? You don't want to do like these. I hope you all see that. You don't want to going like these because it's really hard to get our like to get a notion of where you are when you're doing the snake like these. So I get in because it's always better to, for safety wise, to get in, do what you have to do, and get out by the same path. And we call it the flowers, or you know, because at the end it's kind of a flower, right? So you want to getting out, right, and then as well getting in and do what you have to do, and then getting out by the same path, right? And then like it's like half circle, right? So you're going, getting in, and then after getting out like this, right? It's always how you want to move in that kind of environment like this, right? That is when it's a static move, like crowd like this, right? You don't want to do like the snake because after it's just, you don't know where you are and stuff. And that if you're doing that, always be at the extremity like that. It's the safest way. You go in, you go out. You go in, you go out. Okay. Like I compare that sometimes to like an elastic band, right? Like if you have an elastic band here, you're going to a crowd, but at some point you need to going back to the same place. Okay. Good. If it's a march, right? If it's like mobile, like they're walking, you don't want to stay on the middle over here, or you know, or you do the same thing. You're going in, and after you go out, you always want to be on the edge, okay, on the side. It's represent the safest place, and then it's just easier when you know if you're split, you know, it's easier to just meet when you're always on the edge over here. So you're going in, go out, in, out, in, out. Okay, always be on the edge. Okay. In terms of do you guys have any question? Because we're gonna switch to PPE and then the police tactic. What kind of weapon they're using, and then we're gonna finish with the gas. Have any question before I just go further?
It looks like we do not, so I think you're probably okay.
Awesome. So if any question occur regarding like that, just let Maria Landra know. Okay, and then Maria Landra just please feel to interpret me if you have any question. Okay, great. Basically for PPE, okay, you know, like I think it's really important to try to get good PPE because it's stuff that you're gonna always use, right? Like after like 20 protests of not having any equipment, right, and then getting gas and then receiving projectile and stuff, it's just not worth it, right? You know, like try to take the time to gather some equipment because you will use that along your career. Okay, so you need to protect basically you know, your nose and then your mouth, which is a mask. You need some sort of protection against. And then the second element is your eye protection, right? You need some sort of like protection against these less lethal projectile, which is called a rubber bullet. Okay. And then you need something in terms of like head protection, right, to protect your head injuries. If you're going at night, it's good to have a reflective vest as well. It's always a good. And then for extra protection, you could get a body armor and a Kevlar helmet. But now we're gonna just going more PPE regarding protests in the U.S. context. Okay. All right. N95. Right. The N95 without valve or slightly against tear gas, right, than surgical mask. Okay, and the N95 will filter most of the tear gas particles, but not like it's not like ideal, but it's definitely nothing better than a cloth mask. Okay, just one thing that you have to understand is, sorry for that, like when you're going to protest with a lot of human, like, beside each other, right? It is the biggest threat right now. It's coronavirus, right? It is what you should be worried about. Coronavirus. Of course, there's always it's always indoor versus outdoor, right? And how many humans, right? How many humans, right. So how many humans we're gonna have there by it? So we have a question here.
Yeah, we do. If we are working in a larger, what should we do? Because it's more difficult to get in and out of it. With the example you showed, it was a small crowd.
Sure, it's a good question. Basically, is what you want to do is you want to, if you know like a bit the configuration of the crowd, you want to follow the wall, right, or follow the edge of the street. When you're going there, so you don't want to get in. You want to almost doing the long way, right? Launching the wall, right? Because you don't want to do like the snake techniques, right? You want to launch be close to the wall, right, until where you want to go. It's helping a lot when you know what's the configuration, but you definitely try to avoid getting in a crowd, because if like the shit hits the fan in the middle of a big crowd, you won't be able to move, right? All like if you're in the middle of a crowd, and then you're more vulnerable there. When you're on the edge, like when you're walking on the edge of the crowd, if even if it's a huge crowd, it's better. Through, and then if anything happening, you always have maybe the chance to go indoor, right? If like it's extreme, right? You always have the opportunity, depends of the configuration of where you are, to go inside, right, to get protected. It's always you want to be close of the wall of the building. Okay. So N95, it's always better. Just imagine one thing about your biggest threat will be corner. Imagine when they use pepper spray and tear gas, hundreds of person coughing at the same time, right? One cough produce 200 millions of particles, and you only need 1,000, right, to of particles of coronavirus to get infected. 1,000, and then one cough, it's 200 millions, right? So imagine 100 person producing 200 millions. You're gonna get like infected, right? Like when you breathe, right? If someone is breathing, it's about 20 particle a minute, right? When someone is speaking, right? Not like yelling, but speaking, it's about 200 particles per minute. So if when someone cough, it's 200 millions, right? It's why it's so you're so vulnerable. when you don't have any equipment, PPE equipment for the coronavirus. So for N95, it's good. It's not the best, but if you only have that, it's better than nothing. Okay. Great. So we're speaking about reflective running cycling vest. Maria Alejandra will actually provide you a document with link on eBay and Amazon to provide to get that stuff. Okay. So this one, it's at night. You know, that's a good thing. You know, especially at night. Right. These dust, right, against tear gas. These dust masks don't really work against coronavirus, because what you need in coronavirus, you need a sort of filter, like a carbon filter, and then this one will not do much. Okay. We're gonna speak about gold standards, and then more like, you know, silver standards and bronze standard. The gold standard is to have a a uh, a, um, a gas mask, right? You know, like a gas mask is, you know, expensive, right? A good one, it's around 250 to 350. And then that is, you can buy that on Amazon or any other website. Sorry, not Amazon, because because of the Defense Act, it's almost impossible to get PPE equipment through Amazon, eBay. That one actually is selling on eBay. And then what you have to, for a good gas mask, okay, you need to look the filter NBC, right? CBRN filter. Okay, that is basically what you need. NBC SBRN filter, and it needs to be 40 millimeter NATO, which is the cartridge. Okay, and then we can send you more stuff, and that's what you need to know for a gas mask. Okay. If you don't have any gas mask, what you can do is having a respirator, half mask respirators with safety goggles, right? And then what is a half mask respirator is these 3M has one, Honeywell has one as well. And basically what it is, what you need to, when you're gonna purchase that, it's really important to have two things, okay? One is the mask itself, the half of the mask. And then what you need is a cartridge was going to protect you against the coronavirus, right? Sorry, the tear gas and the pepper spray, and that is, you need to have a organic vapor, OV, organic vapor, OV. It is really important that you have that. Plus, what you need to have is a either, sorry, I'm gonna just close this. All right, sorry for that. Okay. Cadric organic vapor, which is, it could be any of this number as soon as you see organic vapor. And then the second is like N95 P100s or N100s. What it is because you need both. You need the filter and the cartridge. The cartridge need to be organic vapor. Both are there, but as soon as you see OV, organic vapor, and one of these, right, N95 P100s, that will basically protect you against any gas, right, that the police are using, right? So when you have here the whole thing, this on eBay, it's about $70 US, right? And you have everything. Here is with the filter. Here it's a filter. Here's the cartridge, organic vapor. Here it's, I think it's the N95. And then when everything is together, it will protect you 100% against tear gas, right? Here it's an example on eBay, which is, you can have it right now. It's the value. It's about $70 US. This one looked, it's organic vapor and then P100s, right? That is the best. It will protect you against everything. Sorry, the filter is integrated inside the cartridge like this, the pink thing, right? That is the best thing you can have. Okay, organic vapor, and then pure hundreds. Pure hundreds, it's a proof hundreds. That's why it's almost hundreds percent. So with that you will this one is with the Honeywell North, the another company, right? Look here, acid gas, right, or organic vapor. But what it is, it's really organic vapor that we're looking for against sterile gas, and then P100s. This one, if you have both, it's 100% against sterile gas. Okay. Another, but this one is half mask, so you're gonna have to need like some sort of safety protection for your eye, because the tear gas affects your basically your mouth, your nose, your lung, right? So you need, and your eye. So you need to protect your eyes as well. Okay. The another thing you can have, it's a carbon active filter. The only one I recommend, it's an RZ mask you can find on eBay, and that will protect you a bit more than the N95. It's not best, but that the guy like did all the tests with these masks, and then it worked against pepper spray. Okay, pretty much. So it will protect you until like 99%. But you have to have these eye protection goggles, right? We're speaking about, they need to be like tightened seals, anti-fog goggles, right? Which is no air is like, it need to be tightened seal, right? Impact resistant, really important, because if you receive a projectile, it needs to be impact resistant. Anti-fog goggles, and then tightened seal. The swim goggles are good until a certain extent, but the problem with the seal goggle, they're good against tear gas, but not against like projectile. It will break, and then you may lose an eye if you get in the eye. So I looked for a good pair of that. It's about $15 to $20 on Amazon. Amazon, you can actually find these. It's not regulated under the Defense Act, and then you can Google easily. Okay, and then Maria Landra will actually provide you some sort of head protection. Head protection is bike, skate, multi-sport helmet. That will, if someone is like throwing a rock or a brick, or you get shot by a rubber bullet, it will protect you. Okay, it's about from $22 to $35, and you're gonna have a really nice mask, helmet like that. You don't need a Kevlar helmet, you just need that. And then the bike one, like the mushroom run, it's not good enough, right? It's, and then Maria is going to provide you some links as well. Okay. Good. In terms of like security force tactics, right? It's really easy, right? The police, what they want to do, the security forces, is they have two modes: containment and dispersal, right? There's like having a baseline, okay, and then they pass from containment to dispersal, which is they want to disperse, right? So they're gonna use like armed vehicle, police, military lines, baseline and barriers, right? And then after, when they're gonna go to dispersal, they're gonna use tear gas, pepper spray, water cannon, now sound cannon, right? Vehicle, right? And then projectiles, right? We're gonna see in a minute. Arrest and detention, what they're using, it's the snatching teams, and what they're doing, it's the sort of like ninjas, like behind the big guy with the shields and the baton. And basically what they're doing is they charge and they sneak. We call them snatching team, and they just charge, and then they just take anyone like that they think they represent like an interest for them, and they just drive them through the perimeters. That's why they're extremely they're like ninjas, right? They just pop up from nowhere and they just take you. Rather, if you have a camera, they don't care, and then they just take you to the secret perimeters. It's why if you're like near the first line of protesters, you're definitely vulnerable. Great. In terms of anti-riots weapons, look, what they're using, it's like baton, stick, paper ball. We're gonna see what every of them. Tear gas, paper guns, and tasers, rubber bullets, plastic bullets, sound cannon, and water cannon. We're gonna see what they're actually using in the U.S. Okay, pepper spray. Okay, it's pepper spray. It's the range is between 3 and 5 meters, and then usually it's the first line of police officer who are using it. They don't care, if you're a journalist or not. For them, they just see a crowd and then they're gonna just spray everyone. Okay, regardless of your profession. Try basically 3-5 meters if you're in the first line, but you're at risk. Okay. It's the pepper spray. They usually use the pepper spray in a can. Okay. What they're gonna use is pepper spray and tear gas are really similar. Okay. With the effect. The CS gas, tear gas, is when they throw a grenade. Yeah. And then it's like the effective range is 25 meters, which is because they can throw the grenade 25 meters, and then it's throwing by hand, and then the radius is 10 by 10. So why that's going to be a big cloud of smoke, 10 meters by 10 meters. If you're in that range, you will be affected. So I was just mentioning grenade. Now they can actually using these riot guns, 40 millimeters, and then they can shoot you up to 100 meters. And basically what it is, it's a thing 10 by 10 and then meters, and then the process is about 20 to 30 seconds. During up to 30 seconds, you're gonna see a cloud, right, of tear gas. If you're in that cloud, depending on the wind, you will be affected because the wind will, drive that cloud everywhere where the wind wants to do. All right, that is a 40 mil less lethal. They don't really use rubber bullet, but everyone calling it rubber bullet, but it's rubber bullet. It's not that. It's something even more, dangerous, because now they called it less lethal foam. They're in foam, but they're really painful, but they call it less lethal foam marking because they can kill you, but they're just less lethal, right? And this one, it's 99% of anyone get shot in protest, it's by that thing, right? That riot guns. Depends on, it can come from different shape, but usually it's that projectile. And then they have an aim of 100 meters. And then they're using the same gun for tear gas to launch a tear gas, but that is a less lethal for marking round, right? These projectile, right? Really dangerous within 40 meters, less lethal than rubber bullets. They're made in sponge rounds or from rubber baton. Okay, really painful. Okay, I got shot in the military with them as a training, and it's really painful. It could do that really a lot of damage. You can lose an eye and stuff. That's why, be careful of that. You have a proper equipment. Okay. The second weapon of predilection that they're going to use is called pepper ball. Pepper ball is basically, they could use like a paintball gun, and they're going to fill the paintball gun with paper balls, or just a modified gun that they're shooting sort of like these paper balls. Paper ball is basically, it hit as hell because it's like paintball, but even more. And then that's gonna actually hit you, and then the paintball paper ball will explode, and then that's pepper spray. So you get hit, and then more to come. It's a freaking gas, So you get hit, ouch, hell, it's hard, and then after the gas is released. So if you don't have the proper equipment, you're gonna have like two surprises, like the hit and the gas. Beanbag, it's the third weapon they're gonna use most likely, and it's basically they shooting with this shotgun, and then the range is 25 meters, and basically it's like a less lethal foam round, but in terms of it's a bean bag, like literally like a bean bag. They're shooting at you, and that it's on short distance. It could really injure you. Okay. Rubber bullet, they don't use that anymore. They could use it, depends of like the police department, but they're less likely to use that because they can actually kill you if you get shot in the face. And basically the effective range is 45 meters and the lethal range is 5 to 15 feet, right? If they shoot you within 5 to 15 feet, you will die, right? If you get shot in the face. That's why they stop using these one. They're using the other less lethal guns. Flashbang, 30 flash, right? Basically, it's a big boom, right? With it's a big loud bang and a big flash. So 182 decibel. It's basically if a jet, like you were in like a jet in the airport, you were like near jet, and they just taking off. It's extremely loud. It's extremely disoriented. They're gonna use that, and it's a big flashbang. Try to not look the bang because you're gonna get disoriented. So if you see that a grenade like this, try to close protect your eardrum, and then look to another direction, right? Because if you look the flash, you will be disoriented. So I try to look another direction and try to if the grenade is popping near you. Okay. Sound cannon, it's another stuff they're using now. They started using like 3 years ago, and but it's working really well for the police. And basically, it's a long range acoustic device, and it's 150 decibel. What 150 decibel is? 150 decibel is between a jet taking off and a freaking rocket launching from, like it's crazy. Okay. So I hear what you have is you want to get, you're usually using truck or some sort of like mobile device because they're really loud. They're really heavy. So what they're gonna use, it's a big truck, and then they're gonna it's a cannon, right? That's why you want to stay away from that 20 meters, right? So you see 20 meters, 15 meters to 100 meters. What you can have is basically having hair plug, right? Hair plug. Or if you want like more protection, you can get these shooting. Do you have here these shooting? Like the shooter when they go into the range, they have a sort of like air muff for shooter, so you can go on Amazon. It's like $20, and it basically it will protect you. It stop all the sound after like 100 decibel, right? So you can still hear like conversation, and you can still work. So you see the police, they're using a lot of these, right? Because they can communicate, and then if they have any big boom, but they will not hear it, that's going to block anything after 100 decibel. So it's called shooting air muff, shooting air muff, and then it's like $20-25 on Amazon, or you can have these conventional hair plug, but that will work until a certain extent. Great. Shooting, it's a concern could actually happen when moving. Try to stay on the edge of the crowd, right? Along or the sidewalk. If shooting occur, it's the safest place. Always having safe routes or concealment, right? You don't want to be all the time in the action, always on the edge, right? And it could happen, to be honest. I think is like, especially post-election day, could be one of the concern. So always think about maybe the sort of like active shooter or shooting between protesters, and then like let's say the left and the right. Like basically, if people they try to bring guns, always a consideration to look it up. Okay. So the big concern will be that someone will in that direction of the crowd, like active shooter, drop his gun and then or hide his gun, getting in the crowd and shoot again. You know, that's what could happen. So you want to try to get inside the crowd, you want to getting out. A scenario could be one individual or more concealing weapons in their bag, and as you think there is an active shooter situation, stay away from the crowd and try to get to a vantage point, to a higher ground, and leave the zone immediately. Okay, so I try to get to a vantage point, always a good thing. Good. In terms of tear gas, okay, in terms of tear gas, the gas, it's actually heavier than the air. So you want to try to get always like in like higher, like basically you want to be basically above, right? You want to try to get to higher ground because the majority of gases are heavier in the air. So there will be a higher concentration near the ground. So if you're like even 3 meters, right, in let's say on the terrace, or you know, you will not like feel the gas because the gas are heavier than the air. So I always try to be on the high ground. If there's any gas, it will actually help you mitigate that. Which will remove the gas will be air, like the wind. It's always good. Okay. If you want to, if you have any gas on your face, what you want to use some water. So Kat, we're saying to bring some water. You want to pour water from the, you know, like the front, you want to pour water like from the inner corner of your eye to the outer corner of your eye. I don't know if that makes sense, but you really want to incline your head and then pour water from your inner corner to your outside corner. You don't want to put water like on your skin, and then after you know, the skin, like the gas is going back to your eye. You don't want that. You want really to incline your head and pour water from the inside corner to the outside. Okay, that's what you need to do when you're going back home. Wash your clothes in the cold. In the clothes washing machine, is because if you're doing with hot, it will not like clear all the gas, and then you will, like a couple of days after, you're gonna get infected again. So if you're going back, take cold shower, not hot shower, because hot shower will open your pores and that absorbs your skin. So cold shower is good for skin anyways. Remove contact lens, right? Because the contact lens could burn in contact with the gas. Cosmetic can become irritant, so I try to not put too much cosmetic. You know, and it's pretty much that. Okay, at the beginning of the practice, try to determine the direction of the wind. Like, because if the wind is going west to east, let's say left to right, but you try to avoid you know, being in the wind, because like the gas can reach you like up to 200 meters. So even if you try to back down, walking back, and it will not work. Try to getting out of the wind, right? Getting out of the wind. It will help you getting out. Okay. So do we have any question regarding PPE, police tactics, or any other stuff regarding protest in the US context?
It looks like we do not.
Awesome.
Yeah, it looks.
While we wait for in case more people have questions, is there anything else you'd like to add, Kath or Jeff?
No, not really. I hope everybody's enjoyed the webinar and found the points useful. If you do think of any questions at a later date, or you want more information on anything, Maria Alejandra is going to send you the link out probably tomorrow, because it'll take me a little bit of time this afternoon to upload the information to her. But just get in touch, send an email to myself at apspartnership.com, and I'll try and answer questions, not a problem.
Thank you so much, Kath. And yes, like she was saying, I will also be sending a follow-up email with the information that Kath has mentioned, but also with a couple of other resources. And if you have any questions about any of the IWMF's programs or about anything that was discussed today, you're more than welcome to send me an email, and I will do my best to get back to you as soon as possible. But overall, thank you so much for being with us today. We know that that this was a big time commitment, and we just really appreciate it.
Ciao, ciao. Bye-bye, everyone.
Ciao, Jeff. Cheers.